Good evening. Okay. Yep. Good evening and welcome to our Monday, the 20th, 2023 council meeting. I'll just call it to order. So moved by Sam McDonnell, seconded by Martin Lang. Be it resolved that the March 20th, 2023 council meeting of the Township of South Glengarry now be opened at 7 p.m. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, carried. I'll ask that we stand for the singing of our national anthem. Before getting into this evening's agenda, I'm going to take a slight segue and congratulate our clerk, Kelly Compo, on getting her executive diploma in municipal management. So congratulations, Kelly. As well as I'd be remiss to miss Donnie Smeal on the roads department, who has been acting as a roads manager. He is now officially our roads manager. So congratulations to Donnie Smeal as well. So I'll give him a virtual round of applause. Okay, thanks for allowing me the informality of that. I know. So are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest around the table? All right, seeing none, we'll move to the approval of the agenda. Are there any amendments or changes to the agenda?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. We have a number of items that have been requested to be pulled from the consent agenda into items for consideration, those being item 10A, the closure of Butternut Lane Bridge, 10H, the 2023 proportions of enrollment for the Education Act, item 10I, the Impact Farm Forestry exemption, item 10J, the resolution regarding homeless and unsheltered persons, and item 10K, the resolution regarding the moratorium end date. Further, we will be deleting an item, that being the closed session item related to personal matters about an identifiable individual, and we will be adding an item to closed session under the potential acquisition of property exemption.
Thank you. So hearing those amendments, moved by Martin Lang, seconded by Trevor Bougie, be it resolved that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry approve the agenda as amended. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, carried. Looking at the approval of previous meeting minutes, moved by Trevor Bougie, seconded by Stephanie Jaworski, be it resolved that the minutes of the March 6, 2023 regular council meeting be adopted as circulated. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, carried. So we will move into our first delegation of the evening. That is MPAC Overview by Joyce Gravel. And just a reminder, our policy is 10 minutes, then time for council to have questions after, and we'll try and hold you as close to that as we can. We'll turn a clock on for you. And just a gentle reminder to put on your mic too, so you're recorded.
Well, good evening to members of council and staff and members of the public. My apologies for my back to being to you. As some of you may know, I'm Joyce Gravel. I'm an account manager with MPAC in Municipal and Stakeholder Relations. And I just wanted to take a minute to congratulate Council. I know the election seems like a long time ago, I'm sure it does to you, but we haven't had a chance to get together since, so congratulations to those that were re-elected and those that were newly elected. And just wanted you to know that, of course, we at MPAC are here to be your partner in the assessment to taxation equation process. So if there's anything I can do to be of assistance, please always feel free to reach out. So I'm going to see if I can get this to go the right way. Yes. Okay, so I'll jump right in. This presentation was basically prepared for new council, so it's kind of a high-level MPAC 101 overview, so we can sort of power through it because I know I'm on a time limit, and then if there's questions, we can handle those. So our job at MPAC is to assess and classify more than 5.5 million properties across Ontario worth a combined value of more than $3 trillion. In 2022, Ontario grew by approximately 45,000 new residential homes, and we added more than $37 billion to Ontario's assessment rolls across the province. There are 4 key players in the Ontario's property assessment and taxation system. So the provincial government, specifically the Ministry of Finance, responsible for setting assessment and taxation legislation as well as policies. They also determine the education property tax rate, as you know. There is also an independent body that adjudicates appeals of MPAC's assessed values, which is the Assessment Review Board, or the ARB. And then we have us at MPAC, and we are an independent, not-for-profit corporation funded by all Ontario municipalities. Our role is to accurately assess and classify all of the properties in Ontario. We do this in compliance with the Assessment Act and the regulations set by the Ministry of Finance. We are accountable to the province, to our municipal partners, and the property taxpayers of Ontario through a board of directors that is comprised of provincial, municipal, and taxpayer representatives appointed by the Minister of Finance. And then we have yourselves, municipalities, who determine their budget requirements, set the tax rates, and collect property taxes to pay for the municipal services that we all enjoy, such as fire, roads, recreation, and among many others. So municipalities use our MPAC assessments and the established tax rates to distribute your tax requirements to the ratepayers. And finally, and of course most importantly, is the property owner who pays the property tax bill, and they help to set market value through ongoing property purchases and sales. So maintaining Ontario's property database, our property data is continuously updated so that municipal records are accurate when our stakeholders are making important tax decisions, so that we have the most current up-to-date information that we possibly can have for you to use. So how do we do this? We do it by assessing new construction, additions, and renovations promptly. We respond to property owner inquiries and work to help them understand their assessment. We support our municipal partners by offering Municipal Connect, which is a great product where your finance and other staff people can obtain the primary source of assessment-related information. And we work collaboratively on projects that are important to you, and there is an ongoing project for digital building permits. We have important statutory duties as well, such as handling requests for reconsideration and maintaining people data by tracking school support for over 5.5 million properties. We conduct property valuation updates. We monitor the market and assess newly built and renovated properties to keep our data current. We also periodically update every single every single property assessment in Ontario based on the same legislated valuation date, and we call this an assessment update or a reassessment. The valuation date for the most recent reassessment opportunity took effect in 2017, and that date is January 1st, 2016, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we go through this. This is when we determined what every single property in Ontario could have reasonably sold for in its current state and condition at that particular point in time of January 1st, 2016. So provincial legislation determines when we can conduct the province-wide assessment update, and they set the valuation date for each update cycle. So currently, as you know, the reassessment that was scheduled to occur in 2020 was postponed by the province to provide stability and certainty to Ontarians and to enable municipalities to focus on responding to the challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic. As a result, we are still operating on the January 1st, 2016 date. However, MPAC continues to maintain and update the assessment roll to reflect ongoing changes such as new construction and improvements to properties. For new buildings or structures, I get asked this often, we are still using the 2016 values for those new, so that you're always comparing the same, the same types of values. So it's not, a 2023 or value compared to a 2016. So it's all the same. So what is current value assessment? We've talked about that, I guess. All properties are assigned a value at a common valuation date, and this is the principle called current value assessment. And really what it is it's the price a property might reasonably be expected to sell for if sold by a willing seller to a willing buyer after appropriate time and exposure on an open market. So this slide explains what happens when there is an assessment update. So it shows the link between the chosen valuation date, the mailing of the MPAC property assessment notice, and then the phase-in, which is bringing the new assessed value of a property into effect over a period of 4 years. It's a 4-year phase-in cycle. So when properties experience a market increase in assessed value, it's spread out equally over the 4 years. If it sees a decrease, it's applied in the first year. What is our role in the building permit process? So really, and what draws our attention to a property? Why would we look at a property? So it's typically one of the following things: a market sale, a request from a municipality or a property owner, building permit activity, or a request for reconsideration or an appeal. So our role is to take building permits and plans and turn them into assessment. Every year we process an average of 300,000 building permits for new developments or renovations. Oddly enough, every once in a while when we send a property assessment notice out, someone doesn't agree. It just happens once or twice, but so we do have a process in place for that. But if you are contacted, if a ratepayer says, I got my notice and I don't agree, there's a couple of things that you can sort of ask, and one of those most important questions is, could you have sold your property for what your assessed value is on January 1st, 2016. And if the answer is, oh, yes, for a lot more than that, then really the issue is kind of mute. If the answer is no, there's no way I could sell it for that, then there's certainly some justification there for the property owner to have it looked at, for sure. And they can also go to About My Property to review the information that we have on file to make sure that the information we have is correct. And they can do comparable research on there as well to make sure that the assessed values are comparable. If they still disagree, certainly we'll do a request for reconsideration. All right, how am I doing for time?
I think you're going well. I think there's only a few more, so thank you for...
I'm almost at the end. So we'll just talk a little bit about property taxes, but not too much. Because assessments distribute taxes. They really don't determine what the taxes that are paid. And there's some really good tools on our mpac.ca website that explain this concept. And there's some great videos. There's some things that can be printed. So I would encourage the municipality to take a look at those, watch them, and perhaps even share them on your own website. So if someone's under your property tax section, I didn't get a chance to take a look to see if it was there, but there's some great, the videos are very, very helpful. Okay. So resources, in anticipation of the next province-wide reassessment, we've implemented a strategy to address some of the misconceptions. There's a lot of people that think if their property value doubles, their taxes are going to double. And that's just not, there's no one-to-one correlation. It really depends on a whole variety of factors. So there's really, it's not that simple. Again, the digital toolkit is available on the MPAC.ca website. Great information. I encourage, again, can't stress it enough to take a look and have a visit there. And I think that's it. Yep, there's some ways to stay connected. We do have a monthly In Touch newsletter, and you can sign up for that on the MPAC.ca website as well. And certainly reach out to me at any time through staff or directly, whichever works for you. We're happy to be of assistance, and I can meet individually, meet as a group, whatever, but I'm certainly here to help. And my information's in your package, so.
Well, thank you very much. Are there any questions from around the table? All right, Councillor Jaworski.
Thank you, through you, Mayor McDonald. Thank you very much, Ms. Gravel, for coming to present to us. A question I had for you is basically comes down to how granular does MPAC get when it comes to establishing assessment value? Like, for example, my understanding is that if your home is on a private road where you don't have certain services like snow clearing or garbage pickup, that you're assessed at a lower level than a similar home on a public road, so that results in reduced taxes. But I'm wondering, like, for example, let's say a homeowner who, some homeowners will say that being located close to a cellular tower or other type of, large infrastructure, that lowers their property values. And I was wondering if that's a level of detail that MPAC goes to when they do these assessments. Thanks.
Yeah, there's a whole list of criteria that enter into that, the assessed value, the decision in terms of what that final number will be. And some of them are, will be a detracting factor, and some will be an enhancing factor. So I can't tell you right off the top of my head if the cellular tower idea is part of that, but I can certainly get back to you on that. But I know, yes, things like access to services and the type of road and some of those factors are definitely part of that equation. Yeah.
Deputy Mayor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. Thanks, Joyce, for the presentation. I'm sure you're aware that a lot of municipalities would like to see the assessment redone. We're a little frustrated that it's been 2016. There's likely people out there wondering if Impact is actually doing anything for the last few years. I'm hoping you guys are right up to speed and ready for them to give you the word. And because we know it's not you that's decided, it's the provincial level that decided to freeze them.
Yeah.
So hopefully we're going to, but do you have any inkling? Are they saying, like, are we going to go back on schedule in 2024? Is there anything that says when we're going to get this back the way it's supposed to be?
No, unfortunately, I wish I did have some news on that, but I mean, there's a spring budget coming up. Perhaps it will be discussed there. But we haven't been given any insight in terms of it will be or it won't be. But we're ready to go. Like we've constantly been keeping everything up to date and current. Monitoring sales activities. Keeping the assessment roll up to date with the new assessment as it comes along. So we're just waiting, like everyone else, to get the green light, and then we'll be, hit the ground running basically. And I think the most interesting thing will be the base year, right? Because I perhaps that was some of the concern with the delay is, when the markets kind of went really crazy, you don't necessarily want 2021 or maybe even 2022. So will it be 23? I don't know, but that base year will be very, very important.
Just to follow up, I agree with you to a certain extent, but we all know that 2016 is not a good year for where we are in the present world. I mean, it's ridiculous, as far as the values. Mm-hmm. And then that's not just housing, even with the farmland values. I mean, it's not realistic at all.
I know. I totally, I don't disagree at all. And we, you know, at MPAC are always having the same kind of conversation about it's just not, but, yeah, fingers crossed.
Councillor Bougie?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you, Ms. Griel, for the presentation. This is more kind of a segue to Deputy Mayor Lang. Are residents able to go on to MPAC and use the new assessment forecasting and marketing analysis, like to get an idea of potentially what their house value would be worth, or not at all?
No.
Okay.
No, the information that's there and about my property is reflective of the January 1st, 2016 assessed value. And so there's really no, like there's nothing that's forecasting or suggesting, no. But I mean, really, most people have a pretty good idea of, you know, what they could sell their house for. Most do anyhow, so. And anyone that sold a property or bought a property in the last 2 or 3 years is well aware, so I don't think it's gonna be a shock. There will be some surprises, I'm sure, but I don't think that the numbers will be a total surprise to most.
Is there a specific department that we could perhaps write a letter to or lobby? I know that's a term to get them to get moving on that, because that is, as you said, is if it's outside of your hands, then is there hands that we can go to?
Yeah, I would think AMO would be,
Okay.
you know, one, I'm not sure if they've been doing any lobbying on your behalf to get this onto an agenda, but that would be one place to start, your
Okay.
MPP.
All right, thank you. Are there, okay, go ahead, one last question, Councillor Jaworski?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor McDonald. If you'll permit this one, because this has to do with something that's later on in the agenda, but I figured it, since Ms. Gravel is here with us, that it might be worthwhile. Later on our agenda, we have an item about the farm forestry exemption from MPAC, where farmers with farm property with wooded holdings can qualify for an exemption, and it used to be up to 20 acres, and now can be up to 30. And I guess a general comment is that most people a lot of folks are unaware about this exemption. And I guess my question to you is, how do folks go by ensuring that they are receiving it, or how can MPAC help us communicate this, this avenue out to ratepayers? Thank you.
Well, the farm forestry exemption was always a part of the assessment equation. So it just was never shown previously. So if you were a farm property, you had up to the 20 acres, you might have only had 5 or 8 or 20. It was always part of your assessed value, but we didn't show it. So like if that was worth $10,000, it would have been taken off already. But now with this new legislation, it's being reflected on the assessment roll, but it's being put to exempt. It was exempt before because it wasn't there. It's kind of it's sort of an interesting, way to do it, I guess, or it was an interesting way to do it in the past because it was always difficult to identify. So if you had it in the past, you would continue to have it, but there would now be the view of, well, maybe you get a little bit more or maybe a little bit less depending on what, our information was. And the municipality has received a list of roll numbers that have been affected. All of those property owners will receive a special amended notice, or there'll be a year-end adjustment that the municipality will receive as a copy of as well, so in Municipal Connect. So I'm not sure, did I sort of?
Sounds like it'll be advertised, the knowledge of it will become more clear now through the information on the assessments.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing. So just, again, to
Yeah,
try to
people-
close this gap of people not being aware of it.
Right, people will see it on they'll receive the special amended notice if there was any change to the allocation that they had in the past. So I guess the other thing to take a look at once once there's a chance to review everything is to make sure that there is still wooded, because some of the imagery or whatever that we may have or the information that we may have may not have been completely accurate. So if there's an area that has been clear cut or whatever, and you see that, there's a notice for 30 acres of FFE, well, chances are that should be changed. So just, keeping an eye on some of those things as well, because we receive no notification of those types of clear cutting activities, so we don't necessarily always know that that forest is gone.
Deputy Mayor Lang?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just to add, I'm still not plain, I'm not clear on, so it was 20, up to a maximum 1 acre for every 10, up to a maximum of 20 acres. Is that 20 acres that you were eligible for the 25% rate, or 20 acres that were removed from your assessed value?
It was 20 acres, and the value of that was removed from your assessed value.
All right. So now we will be eligible for up to 30 acres removed from our assessed value.
Correct. Well,
Okay.
it's going to be on, you're going to see it on your notice, it will be there, but it won't be taxed.
Okay.
So before it wasn't there and it wasn't taxed, now it's going to be there, you'll see it, the municipality will see it, but it will be classified as exempt, so it just won't be taxed. Just as it was in the past, it's just more transparent, I guess is the word.
I think it's something valuable and important. I think we need to make sure the public's aware of it and find a way to communicate that.
Yeah, and perhaps if there's a way through, a newsletter or meetings with the agricultural committee or whatever that, just to make sure people, if they think they're eligible and they don't think they're getting it, then certainly, we're happy to take a look at all of those different individual cases, whether, one way or the other. You shouldn't get it, you should get it.
All right, well, thank you very much for your information to council and the good questions. I guess we get back to that FFE one later in the agenda too, but we thank you for your professional advice on that. And,
You're
yeah,
welcome.
thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move to presentation 6B, North Branch and Cemetery Road Resurfacing. Mr. and Mrs. DeWitt.
Actually, it's just Mrs. DeWitt.
Oh, just Mrs. And if you could just bring the microphone down a
Oh, I
bit. just for
intend
that. Thank you.
Can all the delegation hear me all right? We're competing against some very lively music in the background. So good evening, Mr. Mayor, councillors, Mr. Mills, Ms. McDonald, and all Township of South Glengarry senior management team and staff. My name's Debbie DeWitt, and I'm here with my husband, Bill DeWitt. We live on Cemetery Road. All of us here, we bring to you a delegation of our friends and neighbors from Island Road and North Branch Road. We are all constituents of South Glengarry Township. My husband and I have often contacted the Township of South Glengarry over the past 32 years that we've lived on Cemetery Road. And we'd like to thank staff for the various services that have been provided to us. They have always been very helpful and always very responsive. This is the first time we make a formal complaint, and we do so respectfully. Thank you for this opportunity to address council as a delegation on the matter of surface conversion of both North Branch and Cemetery roads from gravel back to hardtop. So let me begin by stating that there's certainly no ill intent or blaming of anyone or group of individuals for the fact that the original surface treatment of both Cemetery and North Branch roads did not withstand the first year's cycle, let alone the expected projected lifespan for surface-treated roads. Many factors and conditions of that day may have influenced those decisions made, and we're not here to belabor or find fault with past or present council members, senior staff, or any staff member. It is with all due respect, and it is our humble opinion, founded by our lived experience, the surface treatment of these roads disintegrated from the onset because the proper road base was not laid to engineering standards. We believe the issue is relevant to the conversation today, and I will appeal to you later in this presentation to include it as a weighted factor in the priority index measurement tool going forward. So let's talk about today. Given that Cemetery and North Branch roads have never met our expectations, we certainly are not in favor of further downgrading our roads to gravel. Despite the fact that the previous surface-treated conditions were substandard, gravel roads have many more disadvantages and are much more costly to maintain. On February 1st, 2023, when council as a whole met, many councillors concurred we are not interested in roads going backwards. Much time, effort, and money has been spent over the years in maintenance of these two roads, and most recently in 2022. We understand, based on the geotechnical report, that a solid road base for surface treatment was designed and constructed over the summer of 22 on both roads. One would argue that at least 50% or more of the total cost to resurface these roads has already been expended. As such, it would appear prudent of the township and at best value for taxpayers to complete the project of resurfacing both these roads with low-class bituminous resurfacing, given that the project is well underway and nearing completion. We listened to the recording of February 1st, the Council of a Whole meeting, and the presentations that were made. As we understand it, the priority index measurement includes a number of variables, including traffic factor, functional factor, and driveway factor. We are concerned that the traffic count completed in 2022 did not adequately consider the traffic and functional factors, as the traffic counters were laid out after spring planting and after fall harvest. As a result, those traffic counters did not accurately reflect the volume or the type of traffic, namely heavy trucks and considerable agricultural traffic on a road during these peak times. Additionally, in 2022, many people were still working from home due to COVID, further reducing our traffic volumes. We believe if the counters had captured the true volume of traffic, our functional factor would be much higher and account for the damage and maintenance required to our roads. We understand that Bylaw 11-00 has been amended many times over the past 20 years. The recent recommended amendments are suggestions provided to Council for recommendation and for consideration, while asked to remain flexible and leave room for adjustments. We also heard that the priority index is a comparative tool, which does not include a poorly designed factor, and we firmly believe that it should be included as a weighted factor in this particular case. In terms of the number of residents and the driveway factor, this measurement seems somewhat arbitrary, as residents should not be penalized for their rurality. It becomes a matter of equity. It also does not account for landowners who live elsewhere and have heavy volume, and the heavy volume of agricultural traffic that they bring to the roads. If driveway factor and annual daily traffic are the most heavily weighted factors used for measurement, will most of our LCB treated roads be reduced to gravel over time? We certainly agree that qualitative factors must be considered and that speaking with residents and staff is very important in decision making. I've consolidated several qualitative factors in a Word document previously emailed to each of you, which included health and safety issues, quality of life matters, vehicle mechanical issues, and concerns of decreased property value. These factors were presented to me by neighbors when I went door to door to inform them of Council's impending decision related to our roads. In conclusion, we were told in the summer and fall of 2022 by Township staff and Council members alike that the pulverizing of our roads to gravel base was a temporary measure. At that time, we were informed that reconstruction was required to build and pack the road base before reapplication of a proper and lasting low-class bituminous road surface. We were patient to allow this work to occur. Gravel reconstruction has been completed to prepare for this LCB surface conversion for both North Branch Road and Cemetery Roads. Much investment has already occurred. We understand that policies must sometimes be amended. However, this policy was amended last month, February 2023, and we believe the decision to resurface our road with LCB should be grandfathered to return our roads to the previous standard that we expect. We ask that the Township incorporate a practice that nothing goes backwards. So on behalf of the delegation behind me, and many who couldn't attend tonight, I'm appealing to Township Council to return to the initial plan and honor the commitment made in 2022 to resurface both Cemetery Road and North Branch Road with LCB road surface. And as an aside that I can only say is from Bill and I, the tax increase of 6.8% will not likely be welcome news by everyone, but we believe that tax increases are in fact necessary for the Township to maintain the desired level of service and to remain progressive. As the old saying goes, the only thing certain in life is death and taxes. Thank you once again for the opportunity to share our concerns with you this evening.
Well, thank you very much. I didn't realize my mic was on. I hope I didn't have any thing happening, but we'll go to Councillor McDonnell. But if I just may, just for like the due process, we just so you know what to expect of us this evening, we will have ask questions, probably go back and forth. We will have a request go back to council. Like a decision won't be made tonight, but and then we'll inform you of when that decision will be coming forward, just to so you know what to expect this evening. So, Councillor McDonnell.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Debbie, for the presentation and to Bill as well. I sit here and I can say there's consensus around that table that says your road will not go backwards. I don't think it's council's decision to put any road backwards. At this point, Cemetery, in my mind, Cemetery and North Branch, the plan for those roads were to do what we did, increase the grade, the base, fix the base problems that we were having, and then hopefully be able to observe any of the changes. Like we all know, have driven a gravel road, the worst time for them is the next 2 months. And that's when we see the sub-base issues that are bound to come out whenever the freeze thaw comes out. So once we see those boils, that gives us the opportunity to go back, pull back the base, put any geotextile material down underneath to eliminate that, and then we can confidently put a hard top over the top. That was my understanding. As for that hard top going on this year, it is not currently on our budget. I was disappointed with that as much as everyone else, but I was under the impression that it would be a tight timeline to do any geotextile work underneath, to fix any of the sub-base issues that might still be occurring even after all the reconstruction, because you always miss some. Just based on you'd have to get the mix out and the top put on it. I was also hoping to see a lot with, I'm looking around the room and I see a number of farmers in here. Scott Kinlock in particularly sitting in the back there. Running large machinery, turning large trucks at the corner of Cemetery and North Branch, coming out of laneways, takes a real toll on it. We saw it on other roads, especially where there's dairy traffic and a milk truck going in and coming out. It's just a lot of drag on that tar and chip. So asphalt aprons in those corners would give it a lot more lifespan. I know I lived on Robertson Road for a while. It's both these roads were rough for a number of years, and it's not a new problem. I know when I went around, I heard a lot of people say that as much as they don't want gravel, gravel unfortunately was an improvement, and I think the goal of this, I think I can speak for myself anyways, my goal is to be sure we put a hard top on that lasts and not disintegrate like it did the last time. And it's to be sure we truly find all those issues, because there's nothing that bothers me more than going back and changing a culvert after we've hard topped the road, or the year after you've got boils coming up or approaches to bridges that are breaking down. So unfortunately we've seen that in other spots, and I think we're trying to take measures that will eliminate those issues. But I think I've covered a lot, but thank you.
Deputy Mayor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. Thank you, Debbie, and thank you, everyone, for coming. This is the way it's supposed to work, and it's your job to hold our feet to the fire. And there's not enough money to do everything that needs to be done. If we don't hear from you guys, then you'll get, I do not want to see any roads go backwards. I'd like to see more of our gravel roads get paved. I'm still of that opinion. I know it's extremely hard for us to find the money. 6.8% seems like a lot for taxes to go up, but everything else that we're working with is going up even more. The hot mix for the counties today came in at 28% above what it was last year. 6.8 is pretty small compared to some of the increases we're seeing. So I appreciate everybody being here. I'm committed to not letting them go backwards. We'll see what staff can do and rework, whether it will happen this year, but I will commit that I would like to see it go back to hard surface.
Councillor Bougie.
Through Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Ms. DeWitt, for your presentation. I was on council actually when we converted this road from granular to hard top. And as it is at the moment, I guess 10 years is probably, we would have liked a little longer out of it, but I mean, that could be from various reasons, whether it's drainage and so forth, through base layer. But, I mean, we definitely need to resolve those issues before we move on. We do have a roads needs assessment coming towards us very shortly, and hopefully during strategic planning, we can discuss these roads. And as Deputy Mayor Lang had mentioned, a 6.8% increase is significant. We've gone line through line, and the costs are just inflation, and the costs are astronomical compared to previous years. But it is something we're definitely going to look at. And I, again, don't want us going backwards. If we have hard-top roads, I'd like to keep them. At that time, we had a road plan, and we converted quite a few roads over those years. So I also would like to see us moving forward, keep what we have. So again, strategic planning's in June. So not this year, as budget is basically passed, but definitely in the future, I'd be looking at this one to get it done. So thank you, everyone, for coming out.
Councillor Jaworski?
Thank you, through you, Mayor McDonald. Thank you very much, Ms. DeWitt, for coming and presenting, and thank you, yes, to everyone who's here in attendance, as well as Deputy Mayor Lang said this is how it's supposed to work, and it's excellent to have this kind of input and feedback. And I do want to apologize for the noise. It's not normally like this. I'd say this is the loudest it's ever been, and I know it is slightly distracting, so I apologize for that. Building on what I think Councillor McDonnell, I couldn't have said it better than what he's already said, but certainly from my perspective, this was an interim measure. I'm not in favor of going backwards, but I did have a lot of difficulty with the tax increase. And so there were other other items that we had deferred. And that's definitely part of this process, as the mayor's alluded to, is that this information will go back and staff will issue a report, and we'll get more detail on more now with even more data that we've had in the last week or so in terms of the tender costs of different things. We'll have a more accurate picture of what exactly is left to be done and the cost of that, and where we can fit it in or how we might be able to fit it in. I think it's unlikely, truthfully, for this year. As Councillor McDonnell pointed out, there's a lot of extra work that probably needs to be done before it can accommodate it. But generally speaking, I am in favor of I'm not in favor of downgrading roads. One little comment I'd like to make, just in terms of clarification, is that there is no new standard yet in terms of the approach to the roads. Like what was presented on February 1st was a suggestion. It hasn't been adopted. So we're still operating under the same guidelines, to my understanding, for several terms now. I think, though, there might be an argument being made that it wasn't always applied very evenly. But there's no new rule yet. But again, your input on how that could be modeled for the future, I think, is very, very important and very helpful. So thank you.
Yes, Mrs. DeWitt, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know if I have to say through you because I'm not working through you, so just Mr. Mayor. I just want to point out that the poorly designed factor, I believe it was EVB staff person who indicated that in his presentation February 1st, that for consideration for council members to consider when using this index and measurement tool. So as I understand it, 2023, we will not see our road resurfaced. It will remain gravel, is what I've heard from everyone here tonight. And rest assured, we will call you when there are holes in our road, when there's dust, like last summer was intolerable. We'll expect calcium or water on a more frequent basis, absolutely. And I really highly recommend that it's such an important and issue and such an expense to taxpayers that I love students, and it's a requirement to have students come back to our community. It's necessary that we want people to live and work and play in our community and be part, have gainful employment in our community and come back and work with us. So if summer students come, traffic counters after the fact are not helpful, and it's such an important piece of your decision-making that staff have to do that. And if you want volunteers to help you with that, I'm retired, show me how to do it. I'll lay out your traffic counters, or like, what can we do to help? If we're waiting for students to come after the fact when planting's done, by the time they're oriented, it's mid-May, the end of May, it's not accurate. So when something's so important, we have to put the staff out or find other ways to do that, to find the equation there. So thank you very much for your time. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you this evening.
You're welcome. And I think Councillor McDonnell has another comment.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it was a quick one, I guess. Just to that point, the deputy mayor brought that up, and myself, sorry, at that meeting as well. We did highlight that, especially for ourselves, being that close to the ag industry, it is, like, there's very little traffic on the Glen Nevis side road, and then when fall harvest hits, there seems to be a lot more. And it tends to be the heaviest traffic it sees all year. And it's the same with Cemetery Road, North Branch Road, have the same issues. Your biggest traffic will be in the fall, and we did suggest and staff has said that it is going to be a priority for them to do those traffic counts. Yes, during the year to get our regular residential, but as well focusing on the fall on a lot of these, we'll call them former concession and lines type of thing, to be sure we do get an accurate reading that way. And I just want to, I guess, emphasize I think what everyone here is trying to say on our side is we're talking to do those 3 sections of road, we're talking probably a 5% increase on the budget if we were to add it right now and not take anything out. And we take it really serious. And when we spend $500,000 to $600,000, we want to make sure we're doing it once and doing it right. I think that's really what we're coming at from this is we want to do it right and do it once and not really put you guys through what you went through 10 years ago and we've seen it happen time and time again. A good hardtop is put on a poor road, and the blemishes come out almost immediately. So we just want to be sure that that doesn't happen again, and we do it properly. And unfortunately, we let it get to a point where it was unrepairable and unfixable in a year. So, thank you.
Would council oblige me a moment to talk about this? Because I did say in some of my emails to you that I would discuss it in front of you, and I feel like if I don't say my part, I've somewhat misled in those emails. So, like I think the agreement is there around the table, and we come about it in different ways. So I just, my thoughts on these things, like from a strategic asset management plan side of this, I would say the road, like from what I understand of it, doesn't make sense. But sometimes it's very important. Like there's good decisions and there's communicated good decisions, and sometimes it's the how. And I think, I don't think anybody wants to go back, but we are facing considerable budget pressures. So that doesn't mean that we may go back somewhere, but it's how it's done. So for example, if this road in 20 years, for example, probably won't be here, but was to be converted back, there should be a communication plan that you were expecting it. So that's where I fall on. Like this to me is administration doing what we've asked them to do through our policy, which is, like we set policy, and administration generally hears about it. So I'd like to thank, Mr. DeWitt, you would know that as serving for the city of Cornwall for some time. The council tells you what to do, and then you do it. So in that regard, I think this then becomes down to a political decision, which is, or not a political decision so much, but like a decision on doing like the right thing the right way. And I very much appreciate like your factual based conversation to us, because I look to planning guides. They encourage people to live in villages more than in the rural amounts, but I think this will be a 2024 item and something just to consider for council for the next round of budgeting. Like in doing this, Second Line Road, like that conversation may be hard next year too, but I think we're all aware of that. We're all in the opinion, and I guess we'll field your phone calls when they come in, and we'll hope that once it gets done, then it will be satisfied, done on a good base, and communicated in a way that that sets an expectation, right? Because that's it. You had an expectation as residents that was not met, and that's where I kind of go that way. So thank you very much for your presentation, everybody for showing up this evening, and council for your good questions and allowing me to kind of say how I think on these matters, because sometimes I'm a little different. So I appreciate it, and thank everybody, and again, thank the community for showing up.
Thank you very much.
would it be okay to proceed or do we want to wait until the background noise? Perfect, okay, well, we'll move along. So action request 7A, purchase a valve truck. Mr. Sege. I will read the resolution as he walks up. Moved by Stephanie Jaworski, seconded by Sam McDonnell. Be it resolved that staff report 35, 2023 be received and that the council authorizes the Director of Water and Wastewater to purchase a valve trailer from Walks Canada Limited in accordance with their submission in the amount of $113,153.10, excluding HSD. Mr. Sege.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And through you this evening, I am bringing forward, as you mentioned, the valve trailer / hydrovac combo unit, both for the water and wastewater department. As you will see on your staff agenda, we did go out and we got 2 quotes from 2 separate companies, but you will see 3 quotes in total. One for a gas unit standard LX, one for a 2019 demo diesel, and then a Herco Combo VAC ERB 800 gas unit. So there's 2 brand new units and 1 used unit. The used unit is the demo, as I stated. So this evening, due to our staffing and our summer maintenance work schedule, I am recommending the 2023 standard LX gas at $113,000. Both the gas and diesel from Walks Canada can be delivered reasonably quick. Mid-May would both be on site. At this present time, sight unseen, the demo unit is the reason why I am recommending the gas this evening.
I'll go Councillor McDonnell, then Deputy Mayor Lang.
I guess through you, Mr. Mayor, I had a few conversations actually with the Deputy Mayor today. I guess a quick question for you, Dylan. Offhand, what would the cost of that diesel be new? Because in my experience, they're quite a bit more.
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Mayor, the cost of that diesel this year would be $127 for a 2023 model.
I was expecting, yeah, $11,000 to $12,000 difference. I think you've had a conversation with the Deputy Mayor, so maybe I'll leave it at that. I would prefer to see us buy a diesel, just based on the longevity of it. I know the motor that is in that diesel, when I did a little research on the backside, and the one that's in the gas are the same motors that I've had in commercial lawnmowers. I've burnt commercial gas mowers out. I have not yet burnt a diesel out. So that's kind of where my head is. They're running quite comparably, wide open at all times that they're on. So if we can get a better machine at a lower price and you're comfortable with it, I think it's probably a better bet, but I'll leave it at that.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. And thanks, Dylan, for the quick conversation we had just before the meeting. And I think I might have a solution for us. And Dylan had said that the reason they're going with the gas is simply because the diesel is sight unseen. It's a used unit, although only 11 hours, not very much used. So I'm wanting to put forward a friendly amendment. And I think it could almost, our clerk will tell us what we can do, but we could almost say in accordance with their submissions, make it plural, with an upside limit of 113,153. So then if Dylan goes and sees these trailers and he's happier with the other one, it's cheaper than this, if he thinks he's getting more trailer, then the staff has the option to buy either one. And we know we wouldn't be spending more than 113, but we might be getting for 108. I don't know if everybody else is okay with that.
Yes, and administratively, that's doable.
I will just confirm with Kelly that that's doable.
Yes, it is.
Also actionable.
Yes, I do believe it's actionable. A request will have to be made, and I will follow up this week.
Thank you.
So if that's the case, then if we pass, it wouldn't have to come back to us. Staff can make their best decision between those 2 trailers, and we move forward. Is that correct?
I think that'd be a prudent recommendation to use their best judgment. Councillor Jaworski.
Just thank you through you, Mayor McDonald, just to speak in favor of that amendment. I mean, obviously, you know, we just talked about how we have financial constraints bigger than we've seen, you know, ever, certainly in our terms. But still very important that when we spend, you know, taxpayer dollars, that we look at we're not just looking at the sticker price, but that we're looking at the lowest total cost, you know, over the lifetime of the unit. And as Councillor McDonnell has already pointed out, you know, the the longevity out of diesel engines is far, far superior than gas. So even though the, you know, and the purchase price on this one is also lower. So I think we need to, you know, keep that in mind. Again, that lowest total cost over the life cycle of the asset. So I do hope the diesel one ends up being, that you like it. But I guess, again, we leave the decision to you.
Would council like it, the purchase, whichever one administration approves or decides upon? Do we need to hear back about which one it is in a like an information report or an update? I don't know if that's something we wish to, or we just, perfect, so yeah. We'll find out, yeah, that's true. So we trust you. So moved by Stephanie Jaworski, seconded by Sam McDonnell. I'm reading it again as it's been amended. Be it resolved that staff report 35, 2023 be received, and that the council authorizes the Director of Water and Wastewater to purchase a valve trailer from, I think I'm saying this wrong, Walks Canada Limited, in accordance with their submission to an upside limit of $113,153.10, excluding HST. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, carry. We will now move to the purchase of a backhoe. Ms. McDonald, and I'll read it while you're walking up. Moved by Sam McDonnell, seconded by Martin Lang. Be it resolved that staff report 36, 2023 be received and that the council authorizes the general manager of infrastructure services to purchase a 2023 CAT 420 backhoe loader from Tormont CAT in accordance with the quotation in the amount of $226,800, excluding HST. Ms. McDonald?
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. This is an approved replacement for our 2002 Caterpillar 420 backhoe loader has exceeded its end of life. Through this, we went out to 4 different distributors of 4 different types of backhoes, and we received quotations back from 2, being a JCB model and a Caterpillar model, both 23, while I'm back in the past. And our staff were lucky enough to be able to trial out both these units. So they got to experience their capabilities and how well they handled and how well we thought they would work in our kind of construction environment. And so that goes to Councillor Jaworski's point of when we look at these units, we look at what we think we're going to get the most lifespan out of for the type of work that we do, and not always necessarily the lowest price, which is why we're recommending the more, unfortunately, expensive option of the Caterpillar 420, which, if you remember what I said, we're replacing like for like, so we have a CAT 420, and we'd like to replace it with a CAT 420, simply because the JCB is felt and to our folks as more agricultural rated, and like it would be fine if we weren't using it the majority of the summer, and then the CAT felt like a bit more industrial and construction ready, and we do put considerable hours on this machine. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McDonnell.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Ms. McDonald, for the presentation and for the report. I had an opportunity to speak with our new roads manager today, who kindly spoke to me even though he was dealing with a bit of a family issue at home. So I really do appreciate that, and I thank him for that. I had serious concerns when I looked at it, just because being in the ag side of things, I see a lot of our customers that run the JCBs, and they seem like a good machine. I will not say I've ever driven one or run one. I have run Caterpillar equipment. It is extremely, it's very reputable. It's definitely top of its class in my opinion. And having spoken with the roads manager, I was very happy to hear that they had the opportunity to try both these machines side by side, more or less, in our yard in Summerstown. And those were his exact comments. He found it very much a lighter machine, a narrower stance, and probably wouldn't meet all the needs of what we require it to do with the municipality. It would probably suffer maybe more, we'll say, abuse, or would take a little more wear and tear than, say, the Caterpillar would, just being more of an industrial grade. So I'm more at ease with this. I was also happy to hear that the roads manager has been working with an independent contractor as far as maintenance. So I guess where I was put at ease as well was further down the road. We've found somebody who is cheaper than going to a dealership to have work done, who is reputable and actually has a past history with the dealership, and I've worked with well as well, and feel he's very reputable. The JCB side, as far as working with these new machines and the computers, a lot of it would be dealer reliant, and we don't right now have somebody we could rely on for that technology and maybe more reasonable pricing when it comes to service calls. So I'm feeling much better about this, having spoke to the road manager and from your report. So I think I'm all right with the price difference. I think there is a lot more machine there.
Councillor Jaworski?
Thank you, through you, Mayor McDonald. Thank you, Ms. McDonald, for the report. Yeah, in my line of work, I come across, I'm more on the construction side, or I come across the construction equipment far more than the ag, and definitely Caterpillar is far more present in terms of the backhoes than versus like JCB in what I would see. And we will be working it very hard. And I also, our roads manager gave me a call to explain a little bit about how, even with the the test that they were doing, they could feel that the JCB unit was struggling a bit more, and the engine was starting to bog down. And looking at the specs, it has a lower hydraulic flow rate, whereas the Caterpillar has a higher one, which would kind of explains what he described, and that the Caterpillar unit will be able to allow him to have a faster work rate. And also, I mean, it's also for us, having the operators, time is money as well, right? So we want to be able for them to accomplish as much as possible in the amount of time that they are working. And so definitely the Caterpillar is a better unit from that respect as well. Even though the purchase price is higher, I definitely think it's going to serve us longer in the long term, and is worth a higher purchase price.
Okay, excellent. Then I will, I think I read this as Ms. McDonald, Ms. McDonald was walking, so all those in favor of the motion as read. Any opposed? Seeing none, carried. We will move to Filio and Drain Engineers Report, proceed to the meeting to consider. Ms. McDonald, and I'll read the motion beforehand. Moved by Martin Lang, seconded by Trevor Bougie. Be it resolved that Staff Report 37, 2023 be received, and that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry, I'll just go with that the project, the Filio and Drain Engineers Report, shall proceed to a meeting to consider on Monday, the 3rd of April, 2023. Ms. McDonald?
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor, and I apologize for the gross typo in the resolution and how that tripped you up, so you'll need to likely amend that on the fly. I attached a little flow chart to the package. This is a step in the process that is often skipped because it's not always necessary. And as it's described to me as our drainage superintendents, who are not able to be with us tonight, they thought it would be beneficial for council to review the draft report in advance of it going to the meeting to consider, and have your blessing to do that meeting to consider. So the meeting to consider would be held on April 3rd, and that's when we invite all the landowners to come before council, and if they have any problems with the report or wish to make any issues known, that would be their opportunity to speak. And so we are hoping that by having council have reviewed the draft report in advance, that it will make that process a little smoother. I was told to note that the draft report attached to your council package, the report has since been amended, and I apologize for that. The amendments are very good for our residents, so it's reducing the initial cost to construction. It was revising the culvert tables, and then there were a few property errors that were affixed by our drainage superintendents to make sure that our public input was met. So it's a long report, and we'll hear a lot about it, hopefully on April 3rd, but we're hoping that there's enough there and that council is comfortable enough to direct us to proceed. And if we do proceed, we're ready to send those mailers out tomorrow, so that everyone, like, they're ready, they're printed, we just need to stamp them and they'll be gone, so that we will have everyone here on April 3rd. Thank you.
Thank you. As I was part of this project, do you know, and if you don't know, it can be answered at this meeting, the Filio Drain extension, has it been merged into the Filio Drain, so it is one drain? I know the 7th concession drain is still left as a unique drain. Is that something that, sorry to put you on the spot, I just thought of it as I was looking down
Excellent question. I'm not sure, but I do know that all branches of the Filio were encompassed in this report. So I have no idea if it was merged, but the branches were brought in some form.
Thank you. Seeing no questions from around the table, I will read it again as there was a little bit of amendment here. So moved by Martin Lang, seconded by Trevor Bougie, be it resolved that Staff Report 37, 2023 be received and that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry direct that the project Filio and Trade Engineers Report shall proceed to a meeting to consider on Monday, April 3rd, 2023. Did I miss a question over here? No, okay, great. All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Stop up and close the road allowance, Green Valley. Ms. McDonald, I'll read the motion after you present.
Thank you, and through you. This is a bit of a unique one. As you know, residents are welcome to submit a request for council to stop up, close, and sell a portion of our unopened road allowance, and sometimes administration recommends that this is okay, I suppose, for the township. And in this case, we looked at it, and a few red flags got raised. If I could ask the clerk to just scroll down on that page. Yeah, right there. Oh, no, sorry, so I can see the little picture. Excellent. So the request was made for that unopened portion of First Line Road, just north of the CP rail line. You can see that there is an existing barn on that bit of land, and the request was made since, there's a barn on the land, and the landowner would like to own his property and have permission to be there. So when we took a look at this, we noticed that First Line Road squeaks around and crosses the CP rail to the east. And when we clicked on that property of land where the First Line Road is swinging around, that land is all owned by CP Rail. So First Line Road leaves our property for a bit and hops onto CP Rail line property, I suppose. And that's when I thought this is likely not a great idea for the township, and I've explained that in my report that our road allowance would have been here first. So through an original border agreement with the rail lines, we would have seniority at our existing road allowance crossing. And if we were to stop up and close just north of that, then we would lose our seniority. And should CP in the future ever decide to do something different or kick us off, should they, it may never happen, but it could happen. They could close down, similar to the peanut line, and suddenly an insurance company owns the rail line, and they might not be favorable to us being there. So it is my recommendation that we don't stop up and close this particular section, but certainly since there is a barn there, and this is something that Ms. Haley recommended, is enter into an encroachment agreement for the existing structure for its lifespan, so that it is allowed to be there and they can work around it. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for explaining the rights, because I don't understand that so well, so that was very well explained. Deputy Mayor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. I agree with you. We did one today at the County Council. We had an encroachment agreement for some buildings that are on the road allowance and on a well-used road, and it just simply gives them the right to be there until such time that there's a change, and then at that time, things, would be moved. If the building is rebuilt or demolished or whatever, then it would have to be moved off our. So I'm in favor.
Councillor Jaworski.
Thank you, through you, Mayor McDonald. Thank you, Ms. McDonald, for explaining this. It is a bit of an unusual circumstance. And although, you say that, it's highly unlikely that, CP could, want to change their mind. There's a lot of discussion right now about rail crossings and rights to rail crossings and pressure to have, by the railroads to have less and less. So I think we don't want to do anything that would potentially jeopardize having that road there, being able to have that crossing. But certainly, like what Deputy Mayor Lang has explained, on the landowner side, I wouldn't say it's not their fault. I would say that there's this issue with the barn on that piece of property, and I would like us to work with them to ensure that they can continue to enjoy the use of that barn. And and I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Councillor McDonnell.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I had a question, I guess. I'm assuming that the agreement we would enter into would still inhibit them from, based on the letter that Gula Septic had passed on to us, and it appears they're looking to make an addition to that property and will not be able to will we be able to allow it even with that agreement? Or is that still frowned upon? And on top of that, and I'll pile on to Ms. Haley with this, is it possible to stop up and close up to the edge of the easement? And then if such a time came up, we still have our access over the railroad, and if the new owner at the time, if it's not the Goulet's at the time, we could expropriate along the rail bed or make a trade for the section along the rail bed for the unlikely but ever possible event that CP decided to sell the rail line or something like they did with the peanut line. And we keep our access and they get what they want and there's a win-win. Or I don't know if it's possible to close up half a road allowance, but I don't know if there's appetite, but.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor McDonald, I think you put about 3 questions in your comments, so I'm just going to make sure I've captured all of them. I believe your first comment was something to the effect of they were looking to purchase additional land. Is that what you said, or a lot addition?
I think this came to their attention when they wanted to increase the size of that structure, if I read their letter right.
Okay,
And would they still be allowed to do that if we entered into an agreement, or is there a way to word it that way, was more or less the first part of it.
So, without having had detailed discussions with Mr. Goulet in terms of what the potentials would be to increase the structure, my answer to you now would be, we would need to have those discussions. It's possible to enter into the encroachment agreement to recognize the existing structures, and I would amend that encroachment agreement if and when they chose to do additions so that it's still an approval of council, because I think that needs to be reviewed carefully. That was question number 1. And it was my understanding that they're looking to sell this land and to be free and clear of any encumbrances. So that's why in my discussions with Ms. McDonald, we discussed encroachment agreements, because it would allow it to be extended to future heirs and successors of that property if it was agreed upon by council.
I guess the last one I had, is it possible to say close that road allowance off at 60 feet from the rail bed, allowing us the opportunity to, if ever it was needed, divert that road on the north side, more or less have that curve inverted on the other side of the railroad tracks? Is that possible to close it up and sell that and allow us to keep our access, or would that whole piece have to go together?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, to answer the second question, I would be really careful in that consideration, only because you would want to have an up-to-date survey to understand the amount of land that we're speaking about and the cost to reconfigure the road. That would be maybe more Ms. McDonald's area, but we're looping a road where it could go straight through. So I think that would need, an up-to-date survey and further evaluations of those costs to be able to inform you or provide you the information you need to make an informed decision. I'm sorry I'm being vague with my answers because they're what ifs, but I still think there's just some unknowns here. But it doesn't stop us from continuing having those conversations from Mr. Goulet to truly understand what the intent is and what options may be considered, and continue dialogue with council.
Thank you for that. Like I say, it was just, if there's an opportunity for win-win, we keep our access and they get the space, it could work out, but I'll defer.
Ms. McDonald?
Thank you, and through you, just to that last point, Councillor McDonald, when I did the ever so scientific of taking the amount of space needed and moving it above, if we were to realign the road on the northern part of the rail, we would likely need to expropriate the entire barn. So I don't think there is space there to meet our needs.
Okay, I think the intent, though, is kind of saying, like, with this encroachment agreement, it looks like he wants to put a lean-to on the south side, so it seems like there's an avenue to that, but we can't say certainly yes. But I think most of council, if I could take a straw poll, is likely going with the staff recommendation to allow an encroachment agreement. Okay, then I will read that the motion with that option to you. Moved by Trevor Bougie, seconded by Stephanie Jaworski. Be it resolved that staff report 38/2023 be received, and that the council of the Township of South Glengarry refuse the request to stop up, close, and sell the subject road allowance generally located along First Line Road, pin 6714509191, from Concession 8 Road and south 50 meters, and furthermore, that council direct administration to prepare an encroachment agreement to allow the existing structure to encroach on township lands for the consideration by council. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, carried. We will now bring up RFP 04-2023, supply of realty services. I'll read the motion as Ms. Haley comes to the podium. Moved by Stephanie Jaworski, seconded by Sam McDonnell. Be it resolved that staff report 39-2023 be received, that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry award procurement 04-2023 for the supply of realtor services to Lyle Warden, Remax Affiliates, Marquise, in accordance with the submission, and furthermore, that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign all applicable documents. Ms. Haley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as council is aware, we do have some surplus properties that have been either previously declared surplus by previous councils, or in 2022, we created additional land that could be sold. So this resulted in us to complete an RFP for realty services. We were fortunate in receiving 3 submissions. All submissions, all individuals were qualified to conduct the sales. So it really came down to a review of the individual's experience. You will see in my recommendation that we are recommending to enter into an agreement with the realtor, Mr. Lyle Warden. You will note, though, that we did receive a submission from a firm called Landmax Realty Inc. out of Mississauga. They were proposing a reduced commission of 3.25% in comparison to 4%. However, in doing the review of the submission and not having experience working in rural Ontario based on the submission as well as in South Glengarry, we are not recommending that firm to be a realtor. I feel it's very important to deal with someone who's more local. They understand more of a rural area, as well as understanding properties that may not be serviced by municipal services. They may not have access to utilities. So that was the reason for the recommendation. It simply came down to experience. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Haley. Are there any questions from around the table? Excellent. Then I will call it to vote. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, carried. Thank you. We will move to action request 7F, No Mo May. Ms. Brunet, and I will read it as you come up. Moved by Stephanie Jaworski, seconded by Trevor Bougie. Be it resolved that staff report 40-2023 be received, and that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry participate in the Nature Conservancy of Canada's No Mo May initiative, and furthermore that the Clean Yards Bylaw 11-2020 Section 2.1 and Property Standards Bylaw 0913 Section 2.6 not be enforced for the month of May. Ms. Brunet?
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. So as you stated, I am here tonight to discuss the Nature Conservancy of Canada's initiative, which is called No Mo May. It started off outside of Canada, and then in 2021, they came forward and asked Canadians to, or encouraged Canadians to not mow their grass throughout the month of May in order to allow the pollinators to procreate and to stay alive in order to make sure that, you know, our nature keeps blooming and going well and whatnot. So after a bunch of municipalities decide to go forward with the initiative of No Mo May, the Township of South Glengarry looked into the initiative through the NCC and determined that this would be something appropriate in our municipality. Last year, there were multiple residents throughout the month of May that had submitted complaints regarding long grass, and we had to enforce it because we did not come to council with this initiative. And therefore, I would like to bring it forward to council in order to take it on and not enforce our grass bylaws for the month of May specifically.
All right, thank you. Councilor Jaworski.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor McDonald. Thank you very much, Ms. Brunet, for bringing this forward. Certainly, it is done in many municipalities. I know it was done in the city of Cornwall most recently, and I think it's something that is fairly simple to do. I'm sure it will not have unanimous support because there are folks who very much want that very tidy yard look, but there's a lot of data showing that this does have a positive impact. And I think it's a way for all property classes to be involved in sort of like promoting biodiversity and habitat. You know, a lot of times folks will point at, well, you know, you have this kind of land, so you should be maintaining forest and you should be doing this, but this is a way of having, you know, folks in all classes, including single residential, to participate in some way. So I think it's fairly simple. I think it's something we should support. But understanding that not everyone is probably going to be in support of it, but I think overall it's the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jaworski. Would township properties, like how would we do that with our lawn cutting? Would we also let them go to fallow in the month of May?
So that would be up to members of council, but to my knowledge, the other municipalities still cut their grass. So it's strictly the private land residents that would have the opportunity to keep their grass at above 8 inches and not be forced to cut it.
Okay, is that something that council, as a property owner, wishes to entertain? Because it could be something that we could have a staff report come back. I just try to get a straw poll. So am I allowed to segue with that? Okay, perfect. So we'll go counter to the motion, then we'll go see if we're back. So Councillor McIntyre.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think it just opens us up to some issues. We have grass contracts to maintain as well. We have soccer fields people are playing on. Then we start picking and choosing what we are cleaning and not cleaning. Let's keep our life simple and just cut all our grass. I think it's great. Let's let the residents do it if they choose. Let's not make them be punished. But we do not want our general manager of facilities and infrastructure and bylaw getting phone calls and inundated for the month of May with people who don't agree with the initiative. Let's just make our life easy and cut our grass.
Okay, so anybody in favor of cutting grass? Or
No, through Mr. Mayor, I agree with Councillor McDonnell.
Okay.
We have our own soccer programs in the parks that we need to keep our grass at a certain level with all the contracts as well. I think we just keep it status quo on the township side.
Okay, Councillor Jaworski.
Yeah, certainly for sport fields, I don't think we should be letting the grass go long. But what I might suggest, and I think generally speaking, we should cut the township property grass, but you know, there might be a spot where it's, you know, not a contract, where we do it ourselves, and, you know, you could leave one spot and put a picket or whatever in it and just say, like, no mow pilot, and then see what kind of reaction you get. But no, I wouldn't say at large. I'd say at large the township should be cutting their grass, but I don't think there's anything wrong with starting a conversation about it.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Lang, if you have a thought.
I want to cut the grass, but we do have 20 acres around our township garage that grows up to wildflowers and grass, long grass, and so we've got a piece of property that we're letting go back to nature.
Okay, so then the council decision for our property has been made. I believe I have read this motion. So this is for yards not including township properties. All those in favor? Any of opposed? Seeing none, carried. Moving to bylaws, building and enforcement appointment bylaws. Ms. Brunet?
Thank you, and through you again, Mr. Mayor. As you're aware, the council members, our council is the one that makes decisions on who can enforce different bylaws and other legislation throughout the municipality, and that's through the Municipal Act, as well as the Building Code Act, which allows council to appoint a chief building official as well as other inspectors as deemed necessary to enforce the rules of the building department. Upon review of this legislation and particularly our appointment bylaws in the Building Planning and Enforcement Department, it was noticed that 2 bylaws could be or should be updated in order to reflect the appropriate legislation while enforcing our regular duties with the municipality. The first one would be for the Deputy Chief Building Official to include the legislation from the Police Services Act to allow him to act as a peace officer when legislation gets downloaded onto municipalities, such as the Reopening of Canada Act was one of those that required peace officer status, as well as my own appointment bylaw, which would reflect the Building Code Act requirement for inspectors when enforcing building code matters.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McDonnell?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, maybe my council colleagues can remind me, did former council not remove those? We separated them, I thought, for a reason at the time. I'm just wondering if, am I wrong, or when we used to have formerly a manager of, or a deputy CBO and manager of municipal law, and it was two, can you maybe straighten that out for me?
So this amendment or change to the appointment bylaw wouldn't actually change the duties of the inspector, which is what your previous appointment, with the change you're speaking about, did. That was separating, at the time, the deputy chief building official's title from bylaw to ensure two positions, but both positions would keep the enforcement, seeing as if I'm ever on vacation or away or sick, so that other people can still enforce the bylaws. So their role is not going to change, it's just to have it there so that they can enforce it.
Okay, so I guess if I'm to read this correctly, it's basically, I guess, cross-training is what we'll call it, or cross-qualifications?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, I didn't read the motion before, so moved by Trevor Bougie, seconded by Martin Lang. Be it resolved that staff report 41, 2023 be received in the bylaw 2023, being a bylaw to appoint Tyler Thorne as the deputy chief building official for the Township of South Glengarry be read a first, second, and third time, passed, signed, and sealed in open council on this 20th day of March, 2023. And furthermore, that bylaw 21, 2023, being a bylaw to appoint Veronique Brunet as the manager of municipal law for the Township of South Glengarry be read a first, second, and third time, passed, signed, and sealed in open council this 20th day of March, 2023. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, carried. Thank you, Ms. Brunet. Bylaw 8B, 2023 budget and tax rate. Mr. Jane. I'll read this one as you're coming up. Moved by Martin Lang, seconded by Sam McDonnell. Be it resolved that staff report 42, 2023 be received and that the bylaw 22, 2023 being a bylaw to adopt the tax rates and final taxation installment due dates for the year 2023 be read a first, second, and third time, passed, signed, and sealed in open council this 20th day of March, 2023. Mr. Jane.
Good evening, Council. I'm pleased today to present the 2023 tax rates bylaw to council for council adoption today. As Council will recall, during the regular meeting held on March 6th, 2023, Council had agreed to the 2023 taxation levy requirement and then further agreed to the 2023 taxation budget and the water and wastewater budgets. However, at that time, we were unable to produce a tax rate bylaw for 2023 as the counties had not adopted their tax rates and tax ratios, which is a large part of our tax rate bylaw. So that's what you have here in front of you today. It is a fairly boilerplate item in order to adopt the tax rates for 2023 and then also further set the final taxation installment due dates for 2023. There is one item that I would like to highlight in Schedule A. So when looking at a sample property with a median assessment of $214,000 as determined by MPAC, when taking into account the county increase as well as the education dollar increase, if that $214,000 median assessed property was in the residential class, the average resident would be looking at a 4.48% increase to their taxation in 2023. If that property was in the commercial class, the average resident would be looking at a 3.41% increase to their tax rates in 2023 as compared to 2022. And if that $214,000 median assessed property was in the industrial class, the resident would be looking at a 3.66% increase to their property tax rates in 2023. So at this point, I'd like to open myself for any questions that council may have. Thank you.
I'm not seeing any questions, and just to thank you for all that work. You heard Deputy Mayor Lang mention that the hot mix tender of the counties came in 28%, and I think the hardest thing with this budget, having been through a few myself, is we're comparing it to last year's budget, which was based pre-inflation. So hard to keep it at 6.8%, and it's going to be hard to keep us on budget, I think, for the year because inflation hasn't changed. But I do thank you and your team for bringing this one to us and providing us like a skinny budget while being respective of inflation. Like we're not we're not just hiding from it here. So I've read the motion. All those in favor? Any of opposed? Seeing none? Carried. Thank you, Mr. Jane. All right, moving to items for consideration. 9A, IFC INF intersection Third Line Road concession 4, a March 2023 update. Ms. McDonald?
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. The letters at the beginning of that title are item for consideration and infrastructure, just so you're not wondering what random acronyms I have. This is more to get for administration to get council's feelings on where we're going to expend our miscellaneous funding this year for road construction. Often we take our miscellaneous pot and we kind of divvy it up to small things that need to be done. But this year we have one project that's a bit larger than perhaps usual and not quite big enough to be its own capital project, but certainly we didn't want to go and expend our entire miscellaneous budget without getting a nod or finding out if council had other thoughts for this pot of money. So it's Third Line Road at Concession 4 Road, the southern bend, and it's where the road has creeped over the years. So if we can just pull up our figure, Ms. Campo, or whoever has, Michelle, sorry. So originally the road allowance was laid out as a T. We haven't built the road to the east, so when vehicles come around this quarter, they believe it to be, a nice curve. So, and the road allowance wasn't set up to be a curve. So over the past, I want to say 15 kind of years, and you can see this very clearly on Google, the road has banked, the gravel that we put down every second year has sloughed off to the side, and we're definitely outside of our road allowance. This was brought to our attention by one of the farmers in the area, and very amicable, not expecting us to get entirely into our T, but hoping that we can, bring it back and maybe slow down traffic as it's coming around the corner. So it's a bit of work. It's not substantial work, but again, just want your thoughts as to whether or not this is where we want to do most of our miscellaneous work, or if we should hold off for another year or two. I do think this problem or this issue, I suppose, was made through township usage. So it's made by our usage, and township at some point should clean it up at, I suppose, council's discretion. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go to Councillor McDonnell and then to Deputy Mayor Lang afterwards.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for bringing this item. I know Mr. Durfin well. I've heard on many occasions about this corner. I think we should fix it. I think we are the cause for it going that way because, like it or not, everybody cuts that corner more and more, and every time we cut it, more gravel goes into the ditch. I will counter you with, I, however, do not believe it could cost us $20,000. I think this should be 3 days for our guys out with the backhoe, and I know I've had that conversation with a few staff members to see if it's even possible. We're about 5 yards out of where we probably should be and where Mr. Durbin wants us to be. I don't think we need a survey. I don't think Mr. Durbin wants us to get a survey. I think if you told him it cost $20,000, he'd tell you he'd fix it himself and send you the bill. Because it can't cost that much, personally, my personal opinion. We're about 5 yards over our spot. I think our guys are more than capable of fixing it. And, yeah, I do, definitely not in favor. If you're planning to survey this, do not survey it. I'm not in favor of that.
Deputy Mayor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, here's a good job for a new backhoe. I will agree with Councillor McDonnell. Take the backhoe out, pull the gravel back, maybe put some signs with, with some chevrons or something on the top for, a couple of $1,000s worth of our time and a few signs, and I think everybody will be happy. That's my recommendation.
Councillor Jaworski.
Thank you, through you, Mayor McDonald. So I did not realize, I'm familiar with that corner, but I did not realize that it was not meant to be the way it is. So this was an interesting learning for me. When I first read through this, I was quite shocked, maybe it's just too strong a word, about the cost, about changing it. And particularly after the discussions we had earlier today about resurfacing and where we're going to spend dollars, I felt like this was putting, a lot of money into a new thing versus dealing with things that perhaps are already open projects. So certainly, I think the lower cost, I'm in favor of a lower cost approach if there is one on how to fix this. So maybe it's not quite as simple as sending our guys out, but I feel like it could be. But definitely, I think signage at a minimum, I think we need to do something about that. At least start there. But yeah, again, if it's $25,000, I think we should spend that money elsewhere.
It's being recommended perhaps that we can come back just to make sure that we are able to do that, because, I mean, if there is a low-cost option available, I think that's the will of council to take it. It's just sometimes, as we know, things cost more, and we have to do things a proper way to do it right. So I don't know if that's a decision we can make tonight in good conscience, or if you'd like to come back letting us know like a revised cost, and if we can do that, or if it's something we can't do, it's good to know that too.
So if I cut out the survey, that certainly brings the cost down. And the estimated cost to the township is not costs that we're necessarily expending. This includes all of our staffing time and our own equipment time. So it's all the numbers that will hit our account. So we're not going out and giving someone $25,000. That includes, 3 days of 3 people for staff, some flagger students, since we'll need to control traffic through the area, the use of our backhoe. We'll likely have to bring in people to haul a little bit for us, and there'll be a bit of new gravel to be laid down. And signs are unfortunately not inexpensive, but I'm not thinking that we're going to tender this out in any way, shape, or form. We'll call someone if we need them to show up for a day, and can likely come in under. But I mean, it will eat up the majority of some of our miscellaneous stuff. So I guess if you don't have any other miscellaneous type things that you think we ought to be doing, we can scope this down and not do a survey and come in under this.
Okay, that seems to be like, sorry, Councillor McDowell?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, do we factor our staff time into this out of the total budget? Because, I mean, in my opinion, if they weren't doing this, they're doing something else. This is part of their day-to-day job. Why are we factoring it onto this, calling it a miscellaneous? Like, I'm getting a little confused. If they're not doing overtime because of this, and they're not expending major costs over this, other than if it's time on the backhoe, maybe it's Cruikshank or whoever is hauling, VO, whoever's doing the hauling away and bringing in, 22, 40 tons of gravel to fill in like 2 dump truck loads. I mean, that might be our cost, which, I mean, 2 dump truck loads is roughly, what, $1,200? Like, I mean, I'm not seeing where we could even consider it, like maybe the gravel and the contracted work on the dump trucks, but I just don't see the staff time playing into the budget. Or is this how we always do our budgeting? Because to me, it's day to day.
If I may just touch on it, to Mr. Jane, would this be like internal cost controls where when work is done on a specific project, there are revenue and cost lines? The cost lines would include staff time, and I think that's what you're trying to bring here. But it seems, if I may just go on a little bit, it seems that we are able to do it without a survey, and like whether that cost is, where that cost is allocated, that time is used, it's just being used here. So it seems the direction is fairly good, but you still have.
I don't know. I guess my concern was if if we're saying this is going to factor in, say it's $10,000 worth of staff time, and services rendered, I mean, or even 5,000. I just don't see how we do anything then if we're facing that. Like if a culvert fails, we have to change it if it's a small one or a big one or a new road culvert or entrance culvert. I'm just trying to get my head around that, like where we're going to consider anything from staff time to depreciated hours on the machine and this, right? Like I'm just trying to get my head around, is that how we, like, maybe I'm naive in thinking this, but I just figured this was day-to-day work and that comes out of the salaries budget and that's what the guys are paid for. I see Mr. Jane's hand.
Go to Mr. Jane, then Ms. McDonald.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, this may represent a slight change in the way that we have been allocating costs in the past. However, what this is trying to do really is appropriately cost out what it costs the township to provide a level of service. And of course, providing that level of service also includes staff time. It includes the life cycle costing of our assets. And on our books, it is a net zero exercise, right? So whereas a certain budget's staff time is reduced, it's then taken and put into as an expense here. So really what this is doing is appropriately assessing what it costs to provide that service. And of course, providing that cost of service includes the staff time, includes the depreciation on assets and the life cycle costing of assets, et cetera. So it's a more fulsome sort of an analysis. Of course, if it's with the will of council, we can certainly break out those costs so that the internal municipal costs are represented separately from sort of the external hard costs and report that to council. But that's the way that it's presented currently.
If I may, just it's the hard costs are what you were worried about. The soft costs kind of go where they go, like it's budgeted. So you're kind of saying like take those away. You'd be curious as to what that amount would be.
Yeah, I mean, we always say we'd love to know what our, how much more our staff could do for us and as opposed to using contractors. But at the end of the day, I just want to be sure we're not going to empty something that we, in my mind, shouldn't be emptying for the sake of one project when we're going to have 3 culverts that come up out of the blue somewhere down the line this year that need to be changed and our staff are going to be able to do. Or like, I just want to be sure we're not falsely emptying this or giving the impression we're emptying this on one small job.
Ms. McDonald?
Sure. So through you, Mr. Mayor, and this is delving a little bit into operations and payroll. Whenever our road crew does anything, at the end of the day, when they do their timesheets, they have, 20 codes that they can code it against. So if they're working in culverts, there's a culvert code, there's a miscellaneous construction code. Then we can compare those year over year to see, did we meet our hours grading? Did we meet our this or that? So it is already accommodated in the budget. And while they're doing that, they also write down the piece of equipment that they're on. And somehow, through the magic of finance, that gets put in, and I'm not exactly too sure how that net zeroes out, but we do track per every kind of type of activity that we do, our staffing hours and our equipment hours. So it's shown in the budget, and it's not unnecessarily emptying an account. It's simply, you'll see the time there, and I suppose this time under miscellaneous construction, the whole bucket is $10,000, and then how that allocates within that, salaries and wages, township equipment, contracts, and equipment rentals kind of fleshes out depending on who does the work. So council may see our miscellaneous construction being more staff heavy this year, but then you would see somewhere else contracts go up because we didn't have the staff to do it, and it's a balance over, I don't know, I think it's 20 pages of accounts. Yeah, it's quite a bit.
Okay, Councilor Jaworski?
Thank you, through you, Mayor McDonald. Thanks for the explanation, because I had understood that this was money that was all going outside of the township. But if this is more just to give an idea of approximately what would this, cost, with the most of it being, giving an indication of how much staff time and equipment time is allocated towards it, then I guess now that I'm looking at it again, it's more you're saying, this is something we would like to do. Is this something that council is supportive of, understanding that there's only so many of these smaller projects that staff have time for? But in this case, staff is not going to be doing the tarn chip on Cemetery Road or North Branch instead of this. This is something completely separate. But to your other comment, you talk about other miscellaneous jobs. I'll put in a plug. If ever there's work on the parking lot by the rail side in Lancaster that we have, that's a small, I think, miscellaneous job I'd love added to the list. But as you presented this, now that I better understand this, it sounds like it's a good miscellaneous project that should probably be dealt with. Thank you.
Okay, so it seems you have council support, and are we able to do it without a survey? Are you able to answer that question this evening?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we can.
Excellent. Then all those in favor of this motion is read. Any opposed? Oh,
no motion.
oh, I hadn't read it yet?
There's no
Oh.
motion. She's just looking for direction.
My apologies. So you have your direction, please proceed. Okay, the 2023 Business and Community Awards Gala. Who is Miss Haley's presenting? Okay, Miss Haley.
My apologies for that. The fire chief was asking a question. Sorry about that. So you have a brief memo before you this evening to talk about the scheduling of the proposed Community Awards Gala. And you'll see 3 dates that are before you, being September 9th, 16th, or 23rd. We typically do this event towards the middle of September. In working with Recreation Department, those 3 dates are available. And as you can see in the memo, we're also looking to see if we can have 2 members of council assist again on the committee to help make decisions on the approach as well as the selection of the awards. So thank you.
Okay, is there any discussion on this? I know, are you looking for volunteers potentially too this evening, or is that something just to get back to at a later date? Councillor McDonnell.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I am fine with, all 3 of the dates. It's any one of the Saturdays works for me. I'll kindly nominate Councillor Jaworski for the committee. Should she let her name stand?
Councillor Jaworski.
Thank you very much, Councillor McDonnell, for the being volunteered. I'm certainly not opposed to being on the committee, but I was wondering if this is something that maybe we should, I don't want to delay because I recognize that you need to book these halls and whatnot, but this might be a discussion for strategic planning maybe on how we want to have these events sort of, or the frequency at which we want to have them. I'm not sure. Maybe I'm throwing a wrench into this idea, but I felt like I should mention that. Certainly, though, I just checked my calendar. I am available for those dates if it's, if there's already consensus to move forward to have it in September. It was a great, it was well done last year, so certainly the community really, really appreciated it.
If I may, before you, Deputy Mayor Lang, I know in my experience at South Dundas, having just gone through this, they have it actually during the council meeting, and they present right before, and they have a moment there. I don't know that's a lower degree, but that is something that we could, I agree with talking about how we do it, because there are multiple ways to do it, and it is a resource-intensive process, and you always have to consider, I think, the community at the ticket price, right? Like, it's not accessible to everybody, whereas if you had it, like, I'm not saying this is how it is, it's just a different way of doing it. If you had it at a council meeting, everybody can show up, and then maybe have a short council meeting that night and have a little luncheon in the background to support. So, like, this is excellent. All those dates do work for me, but just an idea of where this can go. It can go in many ways. But I do think I'd agree with strategic planning as a spot to discuss a little further. Deputy Mayor Lang?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. Yes, I've been sitting here uncomfortably thinking that I'm not ready to commit to this. And I'm not ready to commit. Like, it was $100 a ticket last year. People go, especially if they know someone's being nominated, and but I enjoyed it last year. But I'm just wondering if there's something we can do that might be a little different. People still get the recognitions that I think that they deserve. So I'd like to have that discussion at some point. I don't know when, if it's strategic planning or committee of the whole or whatever we'd like to do, but I just would like to have that discussion before I commit to doing the same thing we've always done.
Okay, I see a nod, and then Councillor Bougie, you have a comment or question?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just wanted to mention that, yeah, I'm available for all those days, and I know other municipalities have done every second year as well to kind of switch it up. Or maybe we can do a combination of what the mayor said and have a bigger gala every second year, but I guess it is something to talk about at strategic planning, and we can go from there.
So what would you recommend for, it seems like there's no perfect direction to move from this moment. Is there something we can bring in at the next meeting, or, sorry, Ms. Haley?
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Mayor and Council. So if Council's looking at doing different styles of event, that's certainly possible. One thing I'd like to point out, though, that if we are not making a decision until strategic planning, or maybe following strategic planning, we might struggle in finding a caterer. And that was an issue for us in 2022. So if Council's open to a totally different approach and working with the resources we can obtain for the date you choose, then I don't think that's an issue. I just don't want you to be disappointed if you decide on a dinner and then we're not available to get the resources that we need. But we're certainly willing to proceed as per council's wishes.
I suppose then, are we willing to take the risk to wait until June for the caterer, that, as it may eliminate that option to have the discussion? No, okay. So, is that something we're willing to do, to wait until, okay, so we're willing to delay this, the planning for it until after strategic planning, where we'll have fulsome discussion. So, yes, of course, you can make a discussion.
Sorry, and thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know, and Mr. CAO, please feel free to jump in and tell me I'm completely wrong, but I don't know that this is necessarily something that would be a strategic planning discussion. You know, it's an event that we've held historically, but I don't know that it really fits into truly what strategic planning is. In fairness to Ms. Haley and her staff, you know, making a decision in June does not give much time to plan an event within those months. So perhaps a report could come back at a meeting previous to strategic planning with some options where council can have a discussion, and that may, you know, allow staff to, you know, give greater time for planning, and as well as allows us to focus on true strategic planning at that session in June.
That is a fair point. Deputy Mayor Lang?
If you want a decision, I'm willing to decide tonight. I would like to scale back for 1 year, maybe do this every second year. I don't know what we could save in our budget, but this is a tight year. And just simply have the awards at a shortened council meeting with a wine and cheese sort of thing afterwards, right here. That's what I would be looking for, but I don't know. We haven't had that discussion, so.
I did see a nod around the table, so like if it is the will of council, we can make the decision, but I think CO Mills looks like he wants to say
Okay, so
something.
through you, Mr. Mayor, I agree with the clerk on it's not a strategic planning item, but we're now going into committee of the whole. We're discussing back and forth, are we gonna do this, or are we gonna do that? So we have a couple of choices. We bring it back with a staff report in due time, keeping in mind there's only one council meeting in April, so now we're into May. Likely we're not gonna have this for beginning of April. But also to Deputy, I just said we're not in committee of the whole, but to your point, it is a tough budget year. So let's make a decision about what you want from staff tonight, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you, Mr. CO. Councilor Bougie?
Through Mr. Mayor, I would agree with Deputy Mayor Lang. We could hold off for this year and have it next year, every second year.
Councilor McAdell?
I'll agree to that. Scale it back for 1 year and then go from there moving forward.
I guess that seems like there's enough to carry for council, but if you'd like to speak counter to it or for it, Councilor Jaworski?
I would be fine if we scale it back. But I would be interested at some point from hearing about what are some other options, so that when we do talk about what we're going to do the next time, that we have, because I mean, there's lots of different models, and you know, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. Perhaps there's something that someone's doing that's exactly what we think will fit for us. So I would like that information at some point.
Okay, then perhaps a report back, try and time a council meeting close to giving, what day is it? Giving Tuesday, is it? Because normally we have it around, oh no, that's the volunteer appreciation, sorry. So, but a staff report, a staff meeting, oh my goodness, a council meeting around this time, and perhaps look to a report coming back to us saying, as you said, the kind of wine and cheese afterwards, after a small meeting. I think that's the idea, to scale it back.
We can definitely do that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Haley, and, oh, sorry, Deputy Mayor Lang?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, but through you, they still gonna need to do the selection process, so it sounded like Councillor Bougie and Councillor Jaworski were almost willing to sit on that committee.
They are both good councillors, so I mean, I would second if they're interested in that. Thank you kindly for your volunteering. And I'm available. I'm less than a kilometer down the street, so if you need me, just call me. Support resolution, accuracy of permanent register of electors. Ms. Compo, I believe.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. This was a resolution that Deputy Mayor Lang pulled at our last meeting and requested a support resolution. And so that is what was on the agenda this evening and is before council for approval.
Any discussion? I could read the resolution as it's written in front of me. Okay, great. Moved by Martin Lang, seconded by Sam McDonnell. Be it resolved that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry hereby supports the resolution passed by the Township of Ashfield, Colborne, Wawanoosh and requests that the province of Ontario, through Elections Ontario and the Chief Electoral Officer, utilize any resources available to produce the highest quality permanent register of electors, and furthermore, that this resolution be circulated to the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, Elections Ontario, MPP Nolan Quinn, and all Ontario municipalities. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, carried.
Do you not need a seconder on that?
Seconded by Councillor McDonnell. Thank you, though. If I missed it, I apologize, but it is Councillor McDonnell. The next one was a support resolution, barriers for women in politics. I know Councillor Lang pulled this one. Do you wish me to read the resolution, or do you wish to talk about it for a moment, make a statement? Okay, excellent. Okay. Moved by Martin Lang, seconded by Stephanie Jaworski. Be it resolved that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry expresses its support for women in politics and their right to participate in a political environment that is free from misogyny and harassment and where everyone feels equitable. That the Township of South Glengarry commits to taking steps to ensure that our political environment is inclusive and welcoming to all individuals, regardless of gender, race, ethnicity, religion, sexual orientation, or other identity factors. That the Township of South Glengarry joins the town of Grimsby in encouraging other municipalities in Ontario and across Canada to join us in supporting women in politics and promoting gender equity in all areas of society. And furthermore, that a copy of this resolution be sent to all Ontario municipalities, the Premier of Ontario, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, MP Eric Duncan, MPP Nolan Quinn, and the Association of Municipalities of Ontario. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, carried. We will now move into the consent agenda. 5 items were pulled. First item is 10A, CA infrastructure, closure of Butternut Lane Bridge, structure number 30050. Councillor Jaworski pulled it, and Ms. McDonald may be called upon for questions, but I will.
Thank you, through Mayor McDonald. Yes, I had a resident reach out recently about Butternut, having concerns about the surface, saying that the sides had deteriorated and perhaps people could put their foot through it, or horse's hoof could go through it. And I recommended that resident reach out to Ms. McDonald. And I understand now that the bridge is closed, so I guess I want just a little bit more information on why it was closed, and what I know that there's going to be an engineer's study that still is planned, but if I recall, when we talked about Butternut in the fall, there were pictures of it at that time too in the condition. So is it a situation where the condition has deteriorated rapidly beyond what we had expected, or if it was more has to do with the safety complaints? Thank you.
Ms. McDonald?
Thank you, and through you, Mayor McDonald. This one, kind of a mash of both Councillor Jaworski. So we've been monitoring the bridge, and we know that the surface has been deteriorating, and we know that in 2015 we undertook a structural evaluation to confirm its load-bearing capacity, and at that time it was sufficient for snowmobiles and nothing more, which is why there are those 2 bollards restricting the width of a vehicle that could go over it. In 2019, the township undertook maintenance activities, which was putting in the planking and some, I'll call them bumper pads, bumper 2x4s, to keep people in the middle of the path and try and discourage folks from being off of the planking through the middle. We were hoping to get through the structural options analysis so that council could make an informed decision of the future of this recreational structure moving forward. However, we were recently pressed to provide confirmation that the structure could in fact withstand the load, does meet the load bearing capacity for snowmobiles. So I reached out to our engineers on file who did the 2015 structural analysis and the most recent OSIM, which was in the fall, and it was their opinion that we would need to redo that structural evaluation to confirm the load-bearing capacity, which is not in any way a factor of the planking at the top. So this is very much to do with the steel members. So even if we did do a bit of maintenance on the top, I wouldn't be able to confirm to the residents that yes, it can in fact handle anything really beyond a person. And in terms of the planking and the decking, we would need to undertake an inspection, perhaps not a full structural evaluation, but definitely a spring inspection prior to doing in-house or subcontracted maintenance work to get it through to the end of the options analysis. And at this time, our really only money in the budget is to do the structural options analysis. We didn't have any money set aside for anything more. And it's a tough one since it technically I'll also preface, this is a bridge and an unopened road allowance. It's not part of our road, it's not part of Butternut Lane. So we don't maintain our unopened road allowances, and this is going to need to be a larger conversation, I think. And I believe that since it ultimately isn't really a road bridge, it's just in my house, I think, because it's on an unopened road allowance, that at some point we'll need to bring in Ms. Servage, and she'll need to weigh in on its future. Sorry to drag you into this. In terms of its recreational value and the Recreations Department's ability to maintain it moving forward. So I suppose it wasn't something that we did happily. We didn't want, obviously, to close a bridge without much notice. But when we looked at the current condition and the residents provided photos, and our roads manager went out and took a peek at it, and in speaking with the engineers, we felt it was in the best interest of public safety to just put up barriers and keep with our plan to do the options analysis and have council weigh in on the future of the structure moving forward once we have numbers for you.
Thank you very much for that additional detail. Can you speak to timeline on when the additional structural evaluation data would come back to council?
Absolutely, and through you, Mr. Mayor, originally I planned to do, well, let me think, I don't have my schedule in front of me. I'd planned to undertake this study through the summer months when the bridge was easily accessible and the engineers could get out and take a peek, and then we could perhaps hold a small public consultation. So it is my intention to put it out to quote in May. I don't believe I could do it any earlier given my workload, since it was just another, I don't want to say just another, but it's another project to manage, and I would likely fall behind somewhere else.
Thank you, and may I ask just a question that kind of comes off this, but a little bit broader, would be with, as we go through asset management planning and we find more of these, I know we have OSUM that identifies typically our structures and larger culverts. Do you think that this will, situations like this will be more prevalent in the next several years? These bridges that were kind of there but not accounted for in our plans?
Unfortunately, yes, Mr. Mayor, I do think so. I have been delving through files, and I've been here long enough to have found old gems such as this one, which was prepared by our drainage superintendent in 2007, which indicates that we have 20 such structures on our own open road allowance. They're not all massive and they're not going to be as big as this one, but there are 4 structures that at that time he had identified as being fairly expensive to replace, which are again on open road allowances, and they wouldn't be really on our radar. So 20 on open road allowances, 4 of them large, and we'll work to scope them out and see what's up, and hopefully come back to council with revised information.
Okay, so as you mentioned, kind of the prelude to a bigger conversation about unopened road allowances and bridges and how we deal with them, but that's not for this conversation, but just good to have on our minds. It was did you have anything further? Okay. 10H, 2023 proportions of enrollment for the Education Act. Are these all Councillor Jaworski? Okay, so perfect. Councillor Jaworski?
Try to move quickly, my apologies. No, for this one, I wanted, this came across, and I have to admit that it was the first time I'd seen this. And reading through the letter, they say they give this information every year, but for some reason, I had not seen it before. And I thought it was worthwhile to pull it for the rest of council's benefit, because if you scroll through the data, you'll notice that the data there supports a message we've been hammering here in SDG, about how one of the particular challenges we have here is that all our school boards are very competitive in that they all have a high proportion of the population attending them versus in most other areas of the province, one school board dominates by 2 or 3 times the size of the others, whereas here the population is, there's 3 school boards that are almost a third each of the population of students. So I thought that was, it's important to point that out because it's data that, again, and that situation leads to specific concerns in our area where it puts pressure on having schools, for example, high schools that can offer programming because the student population is being cut essentially in 3. And already we have challenges with critical mass in rural areas to have enough students to provide programming under the current funding formula versus what you might have in an urban area. So I wanted to point that out. The other thing is, I don't know if staff can help with this, but interestingly, they put the same percentages across the 4 school boards, the same percentages for SDG and Prescott Russell. And I suspect they are not the same. So I'm wondering at what level the Minister of Education or whoever compiles this data is actually doing their slicing and dicing. And I don't know if staff could assist in getting a more, I assume, accurate or precise number, more drilling down, because I have a feeling they've done an average for a much larger area, whereas if we looked at it in a more granular way, we might have slightly different numbers. So I don't know if that's something staff can assist with. But I think it would be useful for the education file going forward. Thank you.
All right, yeah, so that's Mr. Jane.
Yep, through you, Mr. Mayor. So that's a fair point, Councillor Jaworski. We will look into different ways of how we can help. However, it must be understood that all of this is set by the province, and they, of course, have some very stringent processes and procedures in terms of how they determine this. And unfortunately, I don't think we're going to be able to lead the charge in terms of them changing their formulas of how this is determined, nor changing the geographical area for which this data is representative of. So we can certainly look into it, but I do want to sort of caution that there might not be much action on that front. Thank you.
Thank you, understood. I think it's just more clarity ideally more clarity. Thank you.
Thank you. Then 10I, MPAC Farm Forestry Exemption.
Through you, Mayor McDonald, you indulged me earlier, so I got the answers I needed there.
Great. Resolution, Homeless and Unsheltered Persons, Town of Cobourg, 10J.
This was a question to you, Mayor McDonald, and Deputy Mayor Lang on if this is something that's being discussed at the county council level, because, AMO, this is one of their main priorities. It's all over social media about calling on the provincial government to address the homelessness crisis. We're seeing these resolutions from across the province coming. So that's my question to you, is if this is being discussed, are we doing some sort of advocacy in our region? I assume it would be a county responsibility.
Deputy Mayor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Short answer, no, we haven't, this resolution hasn't come forward for us, or we've put anything forward. But through, through the programs that are, the shared services program, there definitely is talk about homelessness and housing and affordable housing and so forth, and have presentations similar to what we had here a few weeks ago. But no, we've not pushed forward anything that I am aware of.
I concur. That's my understanding. Councillor McDonnell.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe this was captured within the 7 and 7 through the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus and the work they're doing there. And I know they do have a homeless initiative that they've been working on. So just for Councillor Jaworski's reference, if she's interested, I can fire off some stuff to her.
The resolution, moratorium end date, Moonbeam Municipality.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor McDonald. So I don't know if this came up at the council table, but recently the Ontario Public School Board Association, so the Association of Trustees for Public Schools of Ontario, they put out a call to the provincial government to lift the school closure moratorium that's been in place since 2017, 2018, I guess 2018. Certainly, I guess, and that is a change of the landscape. Because, particularly in rural areas, that was we're generally disproportionately hit by school closures for the benefit of building newer schools in more urban areas. So it is a big concern in rural areas, and Moonbeam is very much a rural area. And so I guess what I would like to, where I was hoping I could get council support, is that in principle, I'd like to support what Moonbeam is stating here. They're asking for not lifting the school closure moratorium, but last term, both at the lower tier and at the upper tier of the counties, we supported the Community Schools Alliance 3 main policy goals, one of which was that if the moratorium would be lifted, that they leave it in place for schools that qualify for the rural and northern education funding. So I was thinking, I was hoping that we could craft a resolution supporting this in principle, but pointing back to those policy suggestions by the Community Schools Alliance. Now that this new call by the Public School Board Association, the trustees, has come out, that's been something that's changed since the last time we talked about that issue or put out a resolution. And I'd be happy, if council's okay, I'd be happy to work with the clerk on coming up with some language.
Straw poll says yes, and yeah, so if you get the language, support in principle, and then the nuances which Councillor Jaworski is talking about, she'll get them to you. Okay, great, so then we'll support that one. Oh, yes, a follow-up, Councillor Deputy Mayor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, just to be open about it, and I'd already mentioned to Councillor Jaworski, but as you're well aware, we decided to move ahead this morning at County Council with the Rural Education Committee, so, and hopefully you will sit on that committee.
That will come through with staff, and we'll have a resolution of some sort to appoint Councillor Jaworski, should she continue to be willing, I guess, in that sense. And thank you for your continued efforts as a Charlene graduate. Yeah, okay, perfect. So we're done with the consent items pulled. So moved by Stephanie Jaworski, seconded by Trevor Bougie. Be it resolved that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry accepts consent agenda. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, carried. Okay, so now we will be entering into closed session. So be it resolved that council convene to closed session at 9:14 p.m. to discuss the following item under Section 2392 of the Municipal Act SO 2001. 2, a meeting or part of a meeting may be closed to the public if subject matter being considered is a proposed or pending acquisition of or disposition of land, specifically potential acquisition of land. All those in favor? Any of opposed? Seeing none, carried. So we'll just All right, welcome back. And be it resolved that the council rise and reconvene into open session at 10 PM without reporting. All those in favor? Any of opposed? Carried. Did I need a mover and a seconder for that?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
It's moved by Councilor McDonald, seconded by Deputy Mayor.
Okay. So that was moved by Councillor McDonnell and seconded by Deputy Mayor Lang. Sorry for the procedural oversight. So then, moved by Trevor Bougie, seconded by Sam McDonnell, be it resolved that bylaw 23, 2023, being a bylaw to adopt, confirm, and ratify matters dealt with by resolution, be read a first, second, and third time, passed, signed, and sealed in open council this 20th day of March 2023. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, carried. So then a motion to adjourn, moved by Sam McDonnell, seconded by Martin Lang. Be it resolved that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry adjourn to the call of the chair at 10:01 PM. All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Thank everyone for this evening, including staff. Have a good evening.